All right. Ephesians 5.
I'm ready for this.
Husbands.
Hey, Bear.
Yeah. By the way, how many of you have a dog? Oh, man, everybody's got dogs here. You know, there's a great test. You know, a lot of people wonder, somebody says, I think my dog loves me more than my wife or something. But there's really a great test. If you don't know if who loves you the most, your dog or your wife, what you do when you go to work on Monday morning, lock both your dog and your wife in the garage all day, and when you get home, see which one's the happiest to see you. And you'll settle that one. It's a very easy test. Ephesians 5:25. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church, and he gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their own wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. No man ever yet hateth his flesh, but he nourishes it and he cherishes it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, and of his flesh, and of his bones. And for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother, and they shall be joined as his wife, and they shall be one flesh. This is a mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Here, once again, we're talking about roles. We're talking, hopefully, about two people. They love the Lord. They're filled with the Spirit. They know his joy. They know his thankfulness that he's there working in their lives. And there's a tremendous sense of submission one to another. And now just the operational roles, the functional roles, kind of as in life. Just like, we mentioned that it's not a greater or lesser. Somebody there, sometimes you'll have, an end on a team that's paid more than a quarterback. You'll have all these different positions people have trained and equipped for, and that's just their role. That's their task. They're not lesser or greater, and so also. And as I mentioned, I think myself, I believe God has created men to be leaders and women to be influencers. Now, a lot of people don't like that with a lot of the things that have happened through the years in the women's liberation movement and things. And but in the sense of, I have no problem with, on one hand, history used to be rather simple in many ways. You go back through most all of history, there was no desire for men, or women to be anything other than they were. Men, basically, their body was better designed to go out and plow a field, to dig trenches, to do the physical labor that they wanted, and women didn't want to do that. They still had some very challenging in just preparing the meals and grinding out the wheat and washing the clothes, grinding all this stuff out. It was, both of them were tough jobs, but there wasn't some people that, I want your job. I think one of the difficulties is that when we've moved into more of the world that we are now, that is not so much physically challenging on it, and you've got people that it has nothing to do with IQ and potential and capacity to achieve, and a lot of women rightfully are saying, hey, that's not a fair market, it's not balanced. I don't disagree with that. I don't have any problem with that. But in terms of the home, I don't have a problem with a woman being executive and having men work for her. And some people do, but I don't see the scripture. What I do see is in the home and in the marriage and the family, the roles and the models that go on there. And here, as Paul says there to the woman, he says, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Now, I think because of the fact that a lot of people don't understand what that means, we have kind of defined it, what we think headship is, what we think it is, what we think it's all about. And, literally on our honeymoon, when we got married, and on one hand, it was interesting, all through the engagement, all through the dating, we never argued, we didn't fight. We'd talk over things, we'd pray over things, and we would oftentimes marvel. We'd see couples that we knew and friends, and they're arguing all the time. We're getting along with it. Why do you want to get married? If you don't get along, if you can't, and we would almost, get crazy. Why would they do that? But then there's something about marriage. Marriage, it is a yoke. The Bible says, be not unequally yoked together. And when you get married, there is now a connection that happens. I don't understand it all, but I know it's real. Of you taking two, and now they're becoming one. And it's funny, you could actually take different animals and to pull a plow. You could take a horse or a mule or an ox, and you could put them onto a plow going back to it, but they would never put a yoke on them. They would never put that around their necks. You could put it on two of like animals, because the like animals both have the same pace. They have the same, but maybe where you've got on one hand a horse that maybe goes up and down, and you've got an ox that goes back and forth, and you go put something on them, they can maybe both go back to the plow and actually pull it together. But you would, and be fine and get along, so to speak. But as soon as you would put that yoke on their necks where you've got a different pace, a different stride, they're going to tear each other's neck apart trying to do it. And so the Bible says, be not unequally yoked. And in marriage, that happens. And sometimes you don't realize almost till you get married. And I know when I was getting married, we were the whole engagement, everything's fine. But then somehow or another, when I got married, I thought, okay, now I'm head. We were friends. I loved you and all of that, everything about that. I want to spend my life with you. We're helpmates. But I have no idea why I did this, why it happened. But we were driving on our honeymoon, driving up the coast in California, 101, looking at it's just gorgeous, beautiful view and everything. We're driving along, beautiful day, and we were talking about something. And I said something, I don't remember what it was, but and Jean said something different, didn't agree with it. And so maybe she didn't understand me, didn't hear me, so I repeated. And what it was, she then, I realized she did hear me, but she went on ahead and repeated the wrong opinion, there. And so I kind of go back and forth gently a little bit with this on it, and think this is I'm really real. We're not, and I'm thinking how important this is. We have to agree. We have, and I internally I got upset. I think I just project. Oh no, what's happening here? I pull over the side of the road, turn the key off, sit down. Beautiful day. I figure, well, let's fix this, type of a thing. In fact, I've oftentimes said about it that I wish they had recordings then. I wish that I could put up the little, phone, iPhone there and record the whole thing, watch it, because I handled this. I'd still say wonderful, really, really well. It should have been put out on YouTube, but they didn't have that then. But anyway, because I very lovingly, very gently, I looked over at it and I said to her, I said, look, from now on, when I say something, that's how it is. And it was that sweet. It was that loving. It was just really, really good. Jean is sitting there listening to this, and her head actually fell off of her shoulders. And she caught it in her hands, so it didn't completely disconnect. And she starts sobbing. She says, "Oh Jesus, what have I done?" There, and just with this thing, and I'm there thinking to myself, this is a really important conversation, because I'm just projecting there. I don't want to be a henpecked the rest of my life. And I don't think she wants to be a henpecker all her life, just going back and forth. And so let's just settle it now. And she's there, oh no, and I can't remember how we kind of resolved it and drove on. We did, on that. But at the same time, that's what I thought being head was. That was, something there. I was like the guy, maybe you heard the story of, a couple hundred years ago, the couple gets married and they're going down the road and, a donkey's pulling them on their honeymoon or whatever. And the donkey just stops and sits down. The guy takes out his buggy whip and starts lashing this, the donkey, and says, I didn't tell you this, you get moving, go on, and the donkey goes on a little farther, goes a little, sits down again. The guy says, that's twice, you idiot, pulls that out, smacks him away with that donkey, whipping it, and thinks, you get up and you get going, don't ever do that again. Well, a little while later, it sits down again, third time. It pulls out, now he pulls out a shotgun, and he blows the donkey away. At which time, yes, true story. No, but he looks, and this time, the woman just starts screaming. She just completely loses, I can't believe. And he very calmly looks over at her, and he says, that's one. And, but to a lot of men, that's headship. To a lot of people in the world, whatever it is that you have to do to settle in your role. But of course, the Bible, that's not true. That's not being head. That's using power or threats or anger or hostility. That's a forced objective. That's carnal man's nature. Trying to, whatever it has to do to bring this about. But here, Paul makes it quite clear. He doesn't leave this to my definition. He doesn't say, well, how you think, or maybe how you grew up, or in your home, or in your culture, what the men are like that are the men are men. He says, that the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. There's your model. There's how, it's not as your father, or as your opinion, or as your culture, or as your nature, or whatever it is comfortable with. You have a very, very clear model out there on what it is to be head. Jesus said in Matthew 23:11, he says, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Mark 9:35, he said unto them, if any man desire to be first, the same shall be last, the servant of all. Luke 22:25, he said unto them, the kings and the Gentiles, they exercise lordship over them, and they that exercise authority upon them are called benefactors. But you shall not be so. But he that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief as he that doth serve. And so when you look at Jesus, that head is saviorhood. Head is servanthood. Head is a very clear model of where Jesus is basically with all of us. He's taking incredible patience and kindness and gentleness to win that role. He could have it any time he wants. I mean, if the Lord just simply said, I am head and you're going to learn, he could flick us to China right now. He could do whatever, and every one of us goes, what do you want? What do you want? Your head. That's settled, on the thing. And but that isn't how he didn't want to be head because out of fear or force or threat. He wants it because of the fact that he's earned it by sacrifice, by mercy, by grace, by patience, by understanding, by long suffering. That one day when we look at Jesus and we call him Lord, it's because he amazingly won it by his love, by his patience, by one day we look and realize how he has loved us, how he has cared, how he has poured his heart and life and interceded for us, presented us faultless, washes us constantly in his blood, and promises to take care of us, provides for us, and with all of this servanthood, this love, this mercy, this grace, one day, Paul says, the love of Christ constrains me. He looks there and he says, I have been constrained, I have been brought into this life of subjection with Christ by his love. It won me over. And when a man looks there and he says, that I love my wife, he says, husbands, you love your wife as Christ of the church. Then he tells us here, what that is really all about. When somebody is the head and they say, I want to be the head, then God gives responsibilities to that man as a head. And the first one he tells him, he says, you are now therefore to love your wife. And that word love, as you may or may not know, is the Greek word agape. And there it means, and the word agape, it's a love that's without discrimination. It's a love that's deep and powerful. It's a love that prevails over all things. But then he even describes how that love works. And he says, that he loves, that Christ, you're to love your wife as Christ of the church. And he says the first thing that this love does is the love sanctifies. He says that he may sanctify his bride. Now that word sanctify, holy, holiness, essentially Greek or Hebrew, they all come from the same root word essentially, and it just means to set apart for sacred use. When there is something there that when somebody is is sanctified. That person is set apart for very specific, incredible use in relationship. You know, it's interesting. I would imagine that most of us probably got married, whether you know it or not, with known as the Old English style of wedding. And that being there to where, you know, the bride and the groom, there's a bride's side, a groom's side, you know, when people come in and sit down. And, there's a best man, maid of honor, there's, the bridesmaids, and there's the ushers or the groomsmen. And when the wedding happens, it's one there that, as they structured, it just isn't pay, just come and have it. You know, usually what happens is that things are set apart where, the parents of the bride be on one side in the front row, the parents of the groom on the other, and then the next row maybe the grandparents for them, and then the next maybe cousins and uncles and aunts. And usually the first number of rows are actually set apart specifically for people, how they are related to the bride and the groom. In fact, in royal weddings, if you've ever watched some of these things, that have gone on, like when Diana, or then again when Charles then married again, but on how, if you watched any of this, is very intriguing, because every person, you're only there by invitation to the wedding, and then not only that, you just don't come in and sit down. Every single seat is assigned there on where you sit, and the assignment is determined by your relationship to the bride or the groom, whichever side you're on. And so there I had this big debate, well, who's closer here, whatever it is, and it can be extremely offended. If you're here in the ninth row and there's somebody in the seventh row that you are closer kin to, than one of them. I mean, it's literally every seat. And I saw one time a chart where they actually measured every exact distance, from them in the royal weddings. Incredible. But we don't do that. We basically, again, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, cousins, and maybe some for specific friends. And then after that, it's mostly just anybody that'll buy you a present, come on in and sit down. You're welcome here. And but the whole thing about that. Then after everybody's in and seated, then after that, the bride's mother is maybe brought down at that time, after everybody else is seated, after the grandparents are seated, and the groom's mother, and then the last would be the bride's. Then the wedding party is up there, and there's, the pastor and the groom, and then the maid, and then they after everybody's seated, now mom's there, she seated, now they'll stop things for a moment, and then they'll start some music. And they open the doors, and now one by one the bridesmaids walk down. And then they will all walk down, and they will take their position on down there. And then after everybody is now in, they usually oftentimes close the door again. And then the mother will stand there, which signifies to everybody else to stand there now for the bride. They open, and now the father will usually, then he is walking down there, has his daughter in his arm, and they play whatever, the wedding march or whatever it is, and down she comes. Then as they come down, they all get down there in front, and they'll ask who gives this woman to be married to this man, etc. They go through those sorts of things, and then they get you up there where now maybe there's a song or other little things in there, but then they get down to the vows. And we actually, when we got married, we kind of did our vows. That we had a rehearsal before, and we didn't really go over it or anything, but we had the rehearsal, going on, and the pastor goes up there, and we go through the whole, while we're saying and things, and you repeat after me, and it was with using the Old English. Don, take thee, Gene, and it's all the whosoever's in the Old English type of thing, which that's how it was. But part of it was there, and I don't hear this really used much anymore, but in the vows, it was, and forsaking all others, I pledge thee my troth. And that's the Old English. That was a thing there. And we went through it at the rehearsal. He had me repeat it. I'd never heard the word troth, and he didn't ask me, by the way, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're saying? And I presume he probably knew, but he didn't ask, and I didn't ask, and nothing went on. I just said it, and whatever it was. Well, then, we go on through the whole thing, and then we get married, with this thing, and I told her, forsaking all others, I pledge thee my troth. But what it actually means there, because I just said it, know what troth was. And as far as I knew, pigs ate out of them or something, whatever. I had no idea. Didn't think about it, actually. But if I ever get one, it's yours, or whatever. I pledge it to you, or something. But anyway, so we do this. Now, what that was in the Old English, what it meant, it was all symbolism, the whole wedding thing, the whole ceremony, every bit of it. And what it meant is this part was very critical to them, because as the bride walked down, she passed up from the most distant of acquaintances on both sides of them, all of them. Row after row, relationship after relationship, then came down to the co-workers, came down to the closest friends, and then it comes down to your neighbors, and then it comes down to your cousins and uncles and aunts and grandmas, grandpas, mom, dad. Finally, everybody, she has now passed them up. And now part of the vow, he looks there and he says, and now forsaking all others, I pledge thee. And that word troth, it is a very simple word, actually. We just don't use it. And it's no longer in the vocabulary at all, but it simply means fidelity. And what it means is that forsaking all other people, it is now a statement to the entire audience. I am now forsaking you and what we have had together, forsaking all others. I am pledging you my fidelity. You are now number one in my life. You have now just moved ahead of all of these people that my friends, my coworkers, my neighbors, my buddies, my parents, grandparents, every relationship I have in life, you now just moved ahead of it. I forsake all others, and you just moved to number one. And it's a way of saying, if everybody please move back one pew. She is now the head of it. She now has that position. And to tell you the truth, I didn't get that. I didn't understand that in our relationship. I'm one of these guys, I basically, since I was 3 years old, I lived in one home my whole life. We moved in. And I grew up in one of them. I had the same friends, grammar school, high school, college. All through school and sports and everything that we did. We were very, these guys were blood brothers. We actually were, that was an era we had clubs and you cut yourself and shared blood. I don't recommend that anymore. But we went through everything. We were very close. And then we get married. And, come back and from our honeymoon. And we're both finishing up our senior year in college at the time. And I had two things that I did all the way, kind of through school. We all through our engagement, she knew it. She watched me. Sometimes she was that on Monday nights. I had a bunch of guys that we played two-man volleyball. One of my friends had a sand volleyball court house. We get back from the honeymoon. I'm walking out the door. I've got my gym bag in my hand. As I'm going out the door, Jean says to me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, it's Monday night." I said, "Volleyball. Go play volleyball." And she says, "Oh, okay. Have a nice time." And you women, you know how to say that. You know what I mean? The way you say something, and it takes us, but we know you don't mean that. You just said that in such a way like, try to have a nice time, or something. Or, but because you're in trouble when you're going down the road and you're talking back to yourself about it. She didn't mean that. What do you mean have a nice time? Why did she say that? She knew that. She knew it all about it. She knew it all the way through the dating. She never ever said one time when we were dating, by the way, when we get married, you can't play volleyball anymore. She never said that. We never talked about that. And you're in trouble when you're driving down the road, you got a big conversation, there's nobody in the car. But on this thing. But it bothered me, but not for long. I recovered quickly. But anyway, so we go on. Well, then Thursday night comes. I'm walking out the door again. Where are you going? It's Thursday night. Here I worked, I went to school. I was carrying 24 units and typing her paper. She didn't type. She was very smart, but she just didn't learn to type like this. So I'd do it. And that's the busiest time but Thursday night, I'm walking out there. Where are you going? Honey, it's Thursday night. Handball. I went down to the Y. We played handball. That was kind of the forerunner of racquetball, if you know what it is. But we played handball night. oh, have a nice time, and we're going through this. And then, but I'm sitting there wondering, what's going on here? You get married and they change all the rules on you. I mean, something that was absolutely fine, and now all of a sudden they're restructuring your life and wanting everything to kind of be different. They don't say it, they don't do it. They're more subtle than that. You women are, to me. Men, we think that. Sorry. But anyway, that's how I'm thinking it. One night I come home, or one morning I wake up. When I wake up, I notice she has the biggest knife that we own under her pillow. She's kind of pulled the pillow over her head a little bit. And I looked there, under her pillow, big old knife. Kitchen, I said, Jean, there's a knife in bed. What's that? What do you do with a knife? And I'm sorry. She said, some nights I hear noises outside and I'm kind of afraid of what's going on. And so I get the knife there. And then when you come home, I take the knife and I put it under the bed. I guess I fell asleep. And so I kind of gave her a lecture. She said, Gene, the Lord's going to take care of you. You got to trust the Lord. You're going to be fine. So I just kind of pushed it all up on her. And then as we're kind of going through things, and I kind of complained to the Lord that, Lord, they change everything on you. You get married. And now it's like all the rules change. And out of nowhere, the Lord speaks to me, says, no, she didn't change the rules. She didn't change it. No, you changed the rules. I didn't change the rules. No, I did not change it. Yes, you did. You changed the rules. And, when did I change the rules? Well, we tricked you with that old English. And you pledged that she was ahead of all your friends and relationships, that she was more important than them, and that you changed the rules. You gave her that place theoretically, but not experientially. There within that. And that's one of the greatest struggles many men have in marriage, that women oftentimes, I've noticed through the years, they're oftentimes wondering where do they stand with their husband and his job and his friends and hunting season or fishing season or whatever else it is kind of that may be going on in their life. Is it sometimes, am I at front pew, back three, move up, where do I sit? Now, granted, sometimes in life, I'm sure back, in planting season or harvest things, a guy could be busy. And, and there's times to where in careers, somebody is really, hey, it's down to the end of the month. We got, restocking to do. We got ordering. We got all this work. We got a bunch of business. We got to close out. And there's definitely these times. But the most important thing in life is that where a woman knows what her place is with him in his heart. Because she can't get that. It's only given. She can't force it. She can't say, wait a minute, this is who I am. I'm your wife. You can talk about it, you can argue about it, but it's not until the man looks there and realizes, that's what I want. I look at all my friends that I had that were very close friends that I had growing up and all around, all up and down the neighborhood. In things, and very close. And yet, the interesting thing is they're basically all gone. All gone. They've gone, married some floozy and left me, or whatever else, but they went on about their careers and whatever their lives. And here, when somebody looks and I want to grow old with somebody. I want to have you the rest of my life. And it's because somebody there, they know what it is to sanctify. They know what it is to look there, and that she knows that position. It doesn't mean that sometimes there aren't things, that you're both agreed on. Hey, you got to go to work. You got to go plow that field. You got to do this right now, or things come up, in life. But the concept of that, of being set apart, that he might sanctify. There'll never be a Christian who ever goes before the Lord and he's busy. You'll never get something and say, something, I'm really tied up right now. Can you come back and ask me about that in a day or two? No. Every Christian knows they can run to Jesus and he's there. And it'll never be on his side of the equation whatsoever, remotely, that he has let us down in any way, and that we are not number one to him. When the Lord Jesus himself has that way of conveying his devotion and love. How much, there's the challenge that we have. Lord, does my wife know that she is number one? Do I know that? Or am I juggling things around with her? Secondly, that he might cleanse her. And here again, this is what Jesus does. He sanctifies. He sets us apart, for eternal work with him as his bride. And then secondly, he cleanses. The amazing thing is Jesus has all the goods on us. Our life is open and naked. If anybody wants to accuse and wants to know let us know where we failed and where we let down, he's got obviously all the goods. And yet at the same time, all he ever does is he ever lives to make intercession for us. If we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Christ goes right on cleansing, washing, interceding, presenting faultless, never holding guilt. Never, there is something there that it ought to be that nobody is more loved and more precious than they are, and Jesus is present, and next to that a woman ought to be able to feel there's no one that loves me and is more devoted to me and cares for me more in this life than my husband. And, that he is the one that I feel clean with. He's the one there that I should never feel so loved, so clean, so washed, so accepted. There with him. And sadly, a lot of women, my heart goes out, to women. One of the things, we live in Orange County in California. And frankly, we talk about it all the time. It's a very uncomfortable place to live. The weather is nice. We like that. But there's also, when you go out in public, it's, in a sense, out to dinner or something. I don't know. I've never really seen the Orange County Housewives show, but I live in it, around it. In the sense of where there's this incredible sense of pressure there on women. We get off the plane all over. We travel all the time, weekly. We're somewhere. But you come and land in Orange County, it's like everybody, they get off. Yeah, it's almost like there's this, there's this code. If you are going to, you want 24-hour residency at Orange County Airport to get off the plane, you have to have long blonde hair, you've got to be thin, you've got to look dressed and rich and classy, or something almost. And the pressure on women. Orange County is the number one, by far, plastic surgery center of the world. And the pressure on women. My heart goes out, to women trying, to fight time, fight the clock. And it's something that our generation does not know how to deal with, in a sense there. When I was a kid growing up, I remember my grandmothers very, very well, incredibly well. They were wonderful grandmothers. Loved us, great, just the model of what it was. But I'll tell you, my grandmothers were bona fide card-carrying grandmas. They were grandmas all the way through. When they got old, they got old. Then nobody thought a thing about it. One of the things, this ages me, and maybe some of you will remember, I don't know what the deal was back in the 60s and 50s and still, but when people got old, they got blue hair. Remember that? My grandmothers had blue hair. Where do you get blue hair? I don't even really know how whether that's dye a purpose or just the dyes were bad then or whatever on it. But they had blue hair. And then the grandmas had these dresses that were with all these little teeny flowers on them. All real small flower patterns on them. And then they had this white, like doily trim on it. Do you remember, some of you, it was just like there was a grandma shop. When you got to be a grandma, you went down to the shop, there's your, and their shoes. For some reason, little kid, you remember stuff like this. But they had grandma shoes. They didn't have these stilettos or whatever they call, trying to walk around on those things. My grandmothers, they had, they were like army surplus stuff. Their shoes had heels on them that were huge. Heel. You could fall over and this thing, the shoe would bring you back up almost. It was just they were just stabilizers, shoes kind of a thing. But they were grandmas. And grandma, you got old. Today you can't get old. You got to do everything you possibly can. Between Paris and Rome and New York and fashion magazines and all this stuff out there, my heart goes out to women trying to fight a clock. Instead, now you can't stop Paris and Rome. You can't do that, but at the same time, though, a husband can look and say, I don't care. I love you. I'm getting old with you. And to me personally, and just my opinion, I think, it's sad because I think sometimes the harder somebody tries to fight time, the more defeating it gets. Sometimes you'll see these people, these women. There's a restaurant one time we go now and then, and we love this chicken soup they got. They have a waitress there that she should have given up 30 years ago on the plastic surgery, because she is now, she looks like a cartoon character. She couldn't stop. Whatever it is, it's just like, you can't stop. She's coming up and, oh no, here she comes. Don't look at her. You got to look at her. It's just overboard. But this poor lady, why do you have to fight this like this? And instead of just, and it goes, I think, first of all, back when a husband, I love you, I married you. My mother was a very beautiful woman. And obviously, I didn't get this by myself, But anyway, she was. My folks, they went to USC in California. They were Trojans. My mother was a freshman queen, and she was a very, very beautiful woman. She could have been an actress and something. But as she got older, she would sometimes. She said, "Should I go get my facelift or this and that?" Because she got wrinkly. But everybody that knew my mother says, something? She's the most beautiful woman. They add to her beauty. They add to it, instead of fighting this thing, But it can be something there when a wife. You can't stop the world, and you can't stop the magazines. You can't stop, everything. But when somebody there, but a husband can say, "I love you. You're my wife. We're growing old together." Heard a story once of this, that woman that she couldn't please her husband. Just married, just the hardest to please husband that ever came along. And one morning she gets up and she just prays. She said, "Lord, I just want to make him happy today." And so she goes out and he's got the paper and she says to him, "Darling," she says, "what would you like for breakfast?" And he pulls the paper back, stares at it for a moment. He says, "Coffee, black coffee, and toast, grits. I want grits, sausage. I want 2 eggs. I want one scrambled and the other fried." And so she said, "Okay, darling." And she goes in there and she gets that hot black coffee, and she gets the grits and the toast and the sausage and the 2 eggs and one scrambled and one's fried, and she brings that out and she slides that over to him there, and she says, "Here it is, darling." She slides it while he pulls the paper back, stares at it for a moment. He says, "Well, I'll be if you didn't scramble the wrong egg." And but some people, they have you'll never please them. It'll never be good enough. A lot of women, all they know is the house is never clean enough. Food is never good enough. I'm never cute enough or sexy enough or something. They always could do better if they wanted to. They could, if you tried a little harder, and even when they give a compliment, "How'd you like dinner tonight, honey?" "Well, nobody got sick." I guess that was good, or something. But when somebody realizes there that that's a husband's role, is she clean and loved and accepted? And then he said, "In the washing of water with the word." And here essentially it's just the husband is the spiritual head of the home, the priest of the home. And in many homes, the husbands leave it to the wives to be the spiritual ones and to handle things. And a lot of times, I know with me with the ministry, I may be the ones that, because I'd be off early, I didn't maybe, get to pray with the kids at breakfast, or I'd get home maybe, and she'd maybe put them to bed and read this Bible story with them. But something there that where the kids and the family and other people know, they know, who is really the spiritual leader of the home. They get up and they go to church because she wants them there. She may be the one, "Hey, get up, get your dress, get going," but or are they going because he does? This is our life. This is what what we are all about, and that's something, again, it's very easy. I think women tend by nature, and I haven't done studies or read studies on this, but I just think women tend to be more spiritual. They tend to be more sensitive to people, to their husband, to their kids, and to the Lord than men. We're kind of just banging out life. What do we got to do? Keep the roof over the head, food on the table, grinding it out. And women oftentimes are seen far more than men. But there's something there when the men sets the standard. This is who we are. And when somebody loves their wife as Christ of the church, then here are three things he does. He sanctifies it, he cleanses it, and he's a spiritual, priest of the house. And then Paul gives us, as he closes this section, he gives this wonderful test, to me one of the most wonderful illustrations in the Bible. For he says there, when Jesus did this, of course, he says that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and blemished. That man one day, he is going to present to himself. Jesus is doing all of this for his bride because he's going to present her back to himself. And he realizes the more he pours into this, his prize is greater. The more he is, that's what he's been all about. And then he says, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loves himself. No man ever yet hated his flesh, but he nourishes it and cherishes it, even as the Lord of the church. Now he looks there and he says, now here's the test. When husbands, love your wife like your own body. And he gives this incredible test. He says, for no man ever yet hated his flesh. He nourishes it. He feeds it. He cherishes it. He loves his body. We love taking care of our body as to our own thinking very much. And he says, just do you love your wife as much as you love your own body? And, it's a very, this morning, I imagine maybe you got up, or maybe you do it before you go to bed, or when you get up in the morning, but you went, I'm taking a shower. And why did you take a shower? My body stinks. That's why you took it. But when you maybe got up this morning and went to take a shower, you didn't sit there, oh man, stinking body. It's sick and tired. This body, it keeps stinking and then re-stinking and re-stinking and stinking again. What is the deal? All of my life, I just clean you up and all you do is go out and stink again. But you wouldn't ever think of, something? I'm tired of this. I'm turning up that hot water to steaming, burning hot. You're getting in there and I'm burning the stink out of you, you stinking body. No, you still get in there every time. You turn it on, mess with the heat a little bit so the temperature's just right before you go and climb in there. You get some soap, and you maybe have your cleaning. You maybe even sing to yourself while you're washing and cleansing. And here, it's something, love a good shower. Love it's refreshing. And here he says, how do you treat your own wife when something stinks to your thinking? Do you love cleansing? Do you love, going through and taking care of her as you do your own body? Do you love, when, you maybe got up and there you inhale or something. Oh, man. What in the world happened in my mouth overnight? Something crawled in there and died, or something. This is terrible. No, you got out the toothpaste, you go in there and, hey, we got to fix that. And you just do it. And it's refreshing to kind of go down the checklist and start fresh again and again and again with your own body. No man ever yet, he nourishes it. You're going to go out and have lunch in a little while. And you'll go in, maybe sit in a restaurant. They'll come in, maybe again, or you'll go wherever you go, maybe up on the wall or something, and they'll have the menu. And you will look at that menu, and you will spend a couple minutes. They say, what would you want? I'll give me a couple minutes. Anything about it. I've been here before. And then you'll maybe ask a question. Now, how do you, you got, are those soft shell tacos or the hard shell tacos? Okay, now, or maybe look there now your enchiladas, are those chicken? Are they in cheese? Or or whatever and you go back and you'll have this whole conversation with your body while you're asking questions, because you're going back and forth. What do you think about? No. You remember last time you had those onions? Oh man, you paid all afternoon for that. No. Your stomach comes back. Nothing spicy for you today. You can't do that. Or no beans, no rice and beans. Not today. Or whatever. And you will go back and forth until finally you and your stomach have come to an agreement. What's going to make it happy? And you look there and say, okay, honey, nothing's too good for you. And you'll do it. And here, Paul says, You nourish your body. You cherish it. Can you do that with your wife as your own body? And do you enjoy doing this? And many years ago, when I actually was leaving staff at Calvary Chapel of Costa Mesa, actually I didn't leave staff, I just moved. We bought a conference center up in Lake Arrowhead, and I went to start what is now in Murrieta, Calvary Chapel Bible College, back in 1975. And we were buying a home up in Lake Arrowhead. And it was a home that was going up for auction. And you had to, and because of the way the auction worked, you had to get a $1,000 cashier's check and put in what your offer was. And then the highest bidder was to get this thing when they had to open the envelope. And then they would open it for public auction, that you could still buy it if you had turned in, you could only bid again if you already had a sealed bid. And you wanted to raise it by 5%. So it was a clever way of getting the maximum dollar out. And well, we wanted this house. I thought we could do it. My dad, he's a businessman, and we're going over the house and the price of this, and figuring out what I think the maximum amount I could pay on this thing, and with it, and then I couldn't go the night that they opened the bid. I was teaching somewhere at a commitment, but my dad said, we'll take G and the kids up, make an evening out of it, and we'll take care of it on your behalf. And so, okay, Dad, what will be if they do open the bids, and depending on where they are and we don't get it, what is the maximum we can just say, that's it, and we're out if we can get it. So we figured that out and came up with an amount. And so I go off and do my thing. They come back. Well, I come back home from teaching. They're already back home. And I come into the house, and Jean, you could tell immediately she's all excited. She's there just kind of going around, we got it, and so I go and says, I take it, we got the house. Yeah, we got the house. Oh, that's wonderful. Of course, what was my question? How much was it? That's all I care. Okay, how much was it? And she, I don't know. That was between you and your dad, well, you were there. How much? I said, well, he's in the other room. You talk to him. So, okay, I go, and Dad, we got that. Yeah, it's going to be great. And so I said, how much was it? What it cost? And he told me it was more than we agreed on. And I'm frankly, I'm shocked. I'm thinking, just more on the thing. Now, I'm a Scotsman. Are you Scottish here? No, maybe you, are you? No, put your hand up. All right. Yeah, look at that. Come on. but I'm Scottish. No, I'm just kidding about being proud of it. Well, I guess whatever you are. But I don't know what you know about Scots, but we actually pride ourselves in being tight. It's kind of one of our most admirable qualities. We think, my motto, my personal motto is where there's a will, I want to be in it. And, sort of a thing. But anyway, so here it comes down, to where it was more. I said, Dad, what? And he said, yeah, well, I'm waiting for him, to maybe offer to kick in somewhere. And he can see I'm a little, frustrated on this thing. And he said, can I give you a little advice? I said, well, I need that. And maybe some money too. But he said, let me give you a little advice. I said, what's that? He said, he that has a happy wife has a happy wife. And basically, whatever that cost you, you better pay it, because the alternative is not very good. Now, on one hand, I don't advocate at all somebody being foolish, ever. Not doing that, with things, but of realizing there that your greatest investment in life is each other, and care for each other, with that. And actually, it ends up, by God's blessing, we bought that place, and in 4 years it tripled in price. Yeah, tripled. And just about $1,000 or $2,000 under actually tripling. It just was one of those places that was wonderful for us, and it really was a blessing to us. But the thing is that when somebody looks there and determines, of what it is to love and to care for each other. And I suppose I'm one of these typical guys a lot. I mean, women, I think, are great with affection. My wife is, definitely. Men, we're not the most affectionate guys so often, and with it, and always need to work on that. And kind of like, the story I heard of this couple, been married for 50 years and never got along. Never did well. They got 3 or 4 children, and it was tough, but they worked it out and stayed together somehow through it all. But they realized that it was really largely the dad. He was never really very affectionate, and showed it and communicated it. And so they actually, for their 50th anniversary, they get them a series of appointments at a marriage psychiatrist guy. And so, okay, they go in. The first appointment, he sits down, and let me tell you, well, she kind of breaks down, and she's open and things. He's there just like a bump on the log. Nothing at all. No expression. It's no softening, no openness. Well, we got to work on that. Comes back for the second one, doesn't get anywhere. Finally, he goes back to some friends and old professors and goes, to what, I can't get through this. Well, try this. And he goes appointment after appointment, trying to crack this guy to where some show of emotion or care or love, he goes, I love the woman, or whatever, but nothing there and he's getting nowhere. Finally, it comes down to the last day, and he's desperate. He's done everything, and he's just grilled him, and he come down, the time's up, got nowhere. Turning around, sorry, I wish I could have helped you guys, but I guess I can't, and things. And they're all walking out, and all of a sudden he stops. He says, wait a minute. And he said, I want to do something. And he said, what's that? And he tells the wife, he says, come here. She comes over to him, and he says, I'm going to do something. I want you to watch me, to this man. What's that? He goes and he grabs this woman, puts his arm around her, bends her down, puts his hand up behind her head, and gives her the biggest kiss she ever had in her life, right on the lips. And there he pulls her back up, and her eyes are kind of spinning, or something. And the guy's the husband, he's standing over there, and he looks at her and he said, did you see that? And he said, yeah. And he says, that woman needs this a minimum of 3 times a week. And he looks at her and he's, I'll have her here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A lot of guys, they don't get it, and realizing that this is who I love. This is my, where the shoe fits. No, but I'm not going to come back to you again. You took it so well. But but when we look there and realize that we want a great marriage, it's costly. It's costly. I heard a story one time with Adam. He's in the garden, and the Lord comes to him. And he said, Adam, I want to make you a helpmate. He said, what's that? He said, it's awesome. It's a woman. Well, what's that? As if we've ever figured that out. But anyway, he says, it's a woman. Well, he says, well, what's a woman? He said, she'll be incredible. She'll be a cook, a gourmet cook, incredible cook. French, Italian, German, Chinese, Japanese, Hungarian, she'll cook anything. And this is before there were French or German or Italians or Hungarians, but she'll be able to cook it all. And she'll be a homemaker, an incredible homemaker. I'm talking foundation, roofing, plumbing, electrical, tile work. She'll make it an unbelievable homemaker there. Give you beautiful children, just gorgeous children. And gardening, she'll love gardening. Oh, man, the hedges will be like, animals, that clipped out, trimmed, just gardening. Oh, it's beautiful. He says, wow. He says, that's something I like that. And he said, well, I can do that for you. He says, well, but how much, what will that cost me? And he said, well, a model of that like that, it'll cost you an arm and a leg. He said, what can I get for a rib? And the point is, in marriage, you kind of get what you pay for. In marriage, I see a lot of people that they go through and they pour their life everywhere else in life, except for in that closest person. But Jesus, he knew what he wanted, and he paid everything for it. I'll give my blood. I'll go to the cross. I'll rise again. I'll intercede. I will never stop caring for one moment. Now, I know the temptation here. Maybe the wives are sitting there, boy, I hope my husband's listening. That doesn't do you any good. Maybe last session, some of your husbands, well, I hope my wife is listening. That doesn't do you good. The thing is, when we sit here ourselves and say, Lord, what are you saying to me? So I suggest you don't go out and say, did you hear that? That's usually a little setback you might be setting your alpha. Well, did you hear yours? Or something. But when you look there and just say, Lord, what do you have for me? What do you have for me? So I guess we're lunch and then back at 2 o'clock. Let's pray. Lord, we want to thank you for today. And Lord, it's healthy, it's good, Lord, to be able to come before you and your word and say, Lord, speak to us. Lord, something that you would have for us and for our heart and for our life. And Lord, we pray that you would strengthen us. Lord, this can only be done by you, your Spirit. Lord, without that, we're utter failures, all of us. But Lord, in you we have the mercy and the grace and the patience and the long-suffering and the kindness. Give us those things from you for each other, that we would truly be patient and caring, listening, helping, strengthening, helpmates to each other. So strengthen us, teach us in Jesus, your wonderful name. Amen.